Now I know, folks. It's been quite the while since you last saw our goofy asses pull up on y'all. We're a little older. We got gambling addictions now. We grow a little closer. But most importantly, we still got that heart. Now, Castlevania is something the crew and myself always look forward to, just sitting down, kicking back, grabbing a drink and playing and having a jolly good time with. It's always good fun to just sit down and shit around with, and talk about our favorite supreme Gothic slam jammer of a series. If you ask me personally what my favorite Metroidvania, a genre so expansive and turbulent with how many indie games it has, and of course, banging Metroid games, Symphony of the Night is the peak. Yeah, we saw that coming. Everyone says Symphony is peak, you just got the safe opinion, blah blah blah. We don't give a fuck, bruh. Sit your silly ass down and just enjoy greatness. Just because it has the smoothest, most buttery control, tunes that will literally have you ascend to the heavens themselves and dap up Metatron? But I digress. I'm rambling. We're saving Symphony for later, baby.
Now, I started with one of the worst entries, Simon's Quest, which, while I didn't enjoy too much, did intrigue me and made me end up play all the other games. And going through each and every single Castlevania games throughout the years has been a life-changing experience, and the franchise means the world to me. Firstly, for an NES game, I'd really like to just delve into that super rich atmosphere. You didn't see stuff like that at the time. It simply enchants you. From the pixel art with the smooth, iconic 8-bit Simon and the unique color choices that help with its gothic and cinematic feel, to the soundtrack that's genuinely just a good tune to bump every now and then when you're in that Castlevania mood. Now, the gameplay mechanics are just simple and clean, and with simplicity, it leaves room for the developers to add depths, and that's where the fun really lies. You can tell they tried to be precise with the level design, which, I don't think they did well with that, but for the most part, it's pretty good. But things such as the god-awful, infamous-ass stairs with that nasty-ass knockback just bump it down for me in terms of gameplay. It's just a part of the era that I'm glad time forgot. But using timing and sweet positioning always leaves it real satisfactory for me to play and progress through the levels. Touching on the soundtrack again, it really does make this game stand out in the way it does. They really knew how to make NES soundtracks go off like that. But yeah, as we said, it adds to the atmosphere, or sometimes it could just be a straight up banger. Castlevania is known for slamming OSTs. Now, some parts about this game that bug me is that randomly I feel as though you would be cruising through a levels and boom, you get hit with bullshit on top of bullshit that make me frustrated, but nothing too crazy like Ghosts and Goblins or other games that demand pixel perfect execution. But it still just bugs me. Dear Lord, not to mention the fact about the controls, though very iconic with the Belmont strut and all, in this day and age, actually, just pulling up to Castlevania 3 a couple years down the line, it already had slightly more fluid control, and you really feel like you have good mobility of your character, that being the Trevor Belmont. The lack of control genuinely just leads to some deaths that got me. Sure, man. Whatever you say, game. And it's nothing too crazy, but it does bring the game down a little in my opinion. In conclusion to Castlevania 1, the atmosphere is groovy, the OST adds to it and makes it all the more better, and it's beloved for its hard yet rewarding game design of getting through those hurdles that they send your way, and it's Worsley.
Castlevania 3, which is the best NES Castlevania game by far, for basically upping the ante on every little thing that the first game did, and also being fun and not boring your mind by its inherent design, and with its so ass backwards progression with Castlevania 2. But that's besides the point. They spice it up this time by adding some new ideas, like either going to the upper level or lower level for the next stage. And you have other playable characters known as the partner mechanic, I believe. When you defeat certain bosses, you can save some of these characters who just have a raging hate boner towards Dracula. They join you to pull up and rock his shit. You have Grant, which I'm like 90% sure is the best dude in the game, because you can fucking control his jumps mid-air. It's just something unheard of. You also got Sypha, who's cool. She likes to cast magic spells and shit. And the magic actually does a lot of work on bosses, specifically from what I remember. And then you finally got this old ass, bitch ass version of Alucard. Man, I don't know what type of beauty cream, 1,000-step skincare routine, hair care shit, fucking plastic surgery they did on this dude, but they got him looking like Leroy from Black Ops 2 up in here, man. Not to mention, he's probably the weakest one in terms of damage, besides the American version of the game, which no point playing since you can switch to the Japanese version of the Anniversary Collection. Only reason to play this version is strictly for bragging rights, but I digress. The artificial difficulty is nasty and makes the level design so infuriating. The stairs, man. I can't handle all that. But all in all, the level design is nice. The difficulty is more balanced. It can still tick you off sometimes, especially with those goddamn Medusa heads in the middle of the stairs. Or like when you're trying to climb them up, it's so fucking stupid. Ugh, the knockback. But, it's fine. All this is for the Japanese version. I think Castlevania 3 is a good solid time. Better than the other two games for sure. They did well upgrading and evolving from past mistakes.
Simon! The Belmont that started it all. Well, released order-wise. CV4 is essentially a new and improved version of CV1, which I humbly believe handled it extremely well. From the gameplay, tone, and obviously the soundtrack. Shout out to, and I hope I pronounced their name right, What I truly love about the game has to be the environment and the sprite work of it. You can feel the liveliness of it all, from the waterfall stage to the inside of the Devil's Castle itself. Again, increased by the music. Like, come on, bro. Take a listen to Dracula's theme. From the music alone, you can piece off enough about his character. The sour yet menacing tone indicating what may or may not be your end, then get hits with the unfathomable willpower of the Night Hunter himself.
Hold up. My boys. Oh, does he throw shits? Hit him. Oh my god! What? Yo, look, I don't give a damn, man. Yo, my name is Simon. Yo, I got a whip. I ain't talking about a car. I'm a fucking superstar. Look, yeah, I throw knots too. Baby boo, what you wanna do? Let's go over to the motherfucking castle. I don't even know, but you is no hassle. Cause when I do the thing, oh my god! I can't. Break it down for me. Stop!
This game also gave birth to the whip's movements. It may not be much, but a refined version of it sure stuck around with the later entries. So don't ever forget the fact that Simon walked just for Richter and Jonathan to run even faster, bruh. There's so many aspects about this wonderful game that I could go on for days, but for now that's all I got to say about it. If you'll excuse me, I'll be munching down some good old potions.
You know, it's quite funny to me. In my personal experience with the series, I played Castlevania 1 at first. Never beat it. My English teacher in 7th grade, while I was helping him set up the classroom, just told me, yeah, you should get the Anniversary Collection and also check out The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. Never did get to Minish Cap properly, though I do have it, just on the good old backlog. But I did peep Castlevania 1. And then I just said, yeah, I'll come back to it. That never happened. Fast forward to 2020, I hear so much praise for the wonderful Symphony of the Night, and decided to just sit down and play it. And that I did. Quite literally, something so beautiful about the Castlevania series is that there is a huge stamp between the difference of watching a game being played and actually playing it. That's off topic though. Point is, that led me to the best Metroidvania and the best Classicvania, that being Rondo of Blood. I promise, once you pop this game in, you already know you're gonna be blown away. Genuinely, every singular individual that has played a Castlevania game, or not actually, after they bump this, the first track, playing through the intro stage, they're like, damn, now this is a real fucking mighty game. It's like the pickle 6-piece tenders broski. Going straight into it, the gameplay is satisfying. Vast improvement over everything else that we've seen. It destroys it by a landslide. Fucking sends it out of orbit. Yet it's just a beautiful mix of a challenging experience, but also blossoms to something purely fair. The game manages to be short but also extremely replayable like some of the early Resident Evil titles. And that's just a special feeling in terms of just gaming in general for me. On top of that, it just has a consistent, creamy pace that keeps you engaged throughout it all and never bores you. Even if it does test your patience a bit, it's still fun. That's the key word here, fun. Each screen you go through every stage is simply fantastic. Funkadelic, groovy, delicious, enriching. Dog, I'm running out of words just trying to glaze this game, but it's just that good. The variety of enemies with all their funky attacks that require you to actually pay attention and work with the game to learn and dodge them. There's a lot of flying enemies just trying to eat you up like it's Ramadan Iftar, bruh. But this forces you to just sit down and engage with the game. That's a very good thing it makes you focus up on. And there's another thing in my eyes, that fighting the normal grounded enemies, it really just makes that so much more groovy to handle, and it's real dynamic because it makes you to try to handle the different types of threats at the same time. And for a Classicvania, yipes man, that's real good. The only time it gets pretty annoying is with the chicken flying dudes near the end. They come back in Symphony, but they're fine there because that game is easy as fuck. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Symphony's probably like easier than just putting on Skechers or something. Speaking on that difficulty, the levels are pretty difficult or challenging during the first go around, but they're also fairly short. Each screen feels unique and has an atmospheric touch that gives that game that much more beautiful sauce that pushes that this game is serious and wants to be the absolute peak that it could be. The bosses are all super duper unique compared to the other games and have a good degree of difficulty to it, and per Castlevania status, beating them feels like a huge accomplishment. Now the music, man. Where do I even begin? Do I talk about the complex arrangements that make the ear fuzz in the best way possible? Do I talk about how it enhances the atmosphere and Gothic aesthetic on top of being funky? Do I talk about how well it sets the tone? Do I talk about the emotional engagement it gives? I got no clue, but we gotta start somewhere, fellas. Firstly, as a musician myself, pal, I feel as though this soundtrack is pure melodic excellence. If you have even just a little bit of knowledge with music theory and being a metalhead, a very big harmonic convention with Castlevania's music in general would be sweet diminished chords in between some power chords to make that action game high octane sound on top of it, giving it like a colorful nuance that makes it even better and more technical. It pushes the player and gives them a ton of forward momentum to keep on jamming and rocking, to hype them up, to keep them playing and explore and find new things such as the alternate level stages, because if you fell into a pit before in the previous Castlevania game, that's it bruh, wrap it up, khalas.
Wipe yourself off, man. You dead.
But in this, it's actually so fucking good that they put alternate stages, or like alternate parts of the stage that you can just get to and keep on moving on. Anyway, back to the music. As I was saying, the thing that's so special and goddamn groovy about this game soundtrack is that on top of that, just generally having spiced up versions of very conventional harmonies and progressions, it's layered with a very, very much complex and unique sounding bass lines and synth. It's a surefire way to invoke not only the atmosphere, but to make it sound pleasing to the player. And also to enrich the game to have a whole new level. Like, golly, it does everything, man. A perfect track of what I'm talking about would be Slash, to be honest. Spinball bumped out right now. Another good one would be OP13. It's the same thing as what I've praised and discussed, just a lot more focused and heavy with the synth, yet still has that colorful tune that what I remember the game a lot for. Not to mention the bunch of classical influence, as you can clearly tell with stuff like Bloody Tears or Vampire Killer. You know, the icons of Castlevania music, but I am not that knowledgeable within music theory to know that far. Just know it is amazing, and if anyone hates on it, they are weak and will not survive the winter. In conclusion, man, this sounds like we're about to end the video, but We ain't. Y'all ordered a Yappuccino, so y'all got it. But let's just wrap up the Rondo part. This game has everything you'd want in the game. Stunning visual design with some absolutely jaw-dropping sprite work. The level design is so tight it never halts progression, keeping up the tension, feeling like you are Richter. The fucking soundtrack, a true testament to what gaming is all about and solidifying itself as peak art forms, man. I ain't even gonna hold y'all. It comes together in a one-of-a-kind experience, truly. The game's way of balancing difficulty and challenging you with gameplay regardless. Ooh-wee! This shit's so fire. It doesn't matter if you're a longtime fan or just getting to the series, Rondo of Blood is an enriching and damn near enchanting immersive experience that I wish for no gamer or just anybody to miss out on. It is, by definition to me and the Mr. Breakfast crew, a timeless slam jam classic.
Bloodlines is a great game and worth your time. I personally don't have much to say about it beyond that I really enjoy its setting and environment design. From the cool reflections on the water and the unique enemy design to the extremely cool gimmicks of the final stage, it all leads to a really funky experience with a very unique art style, especially compared to Super Castlevania 4. It should also be noted that this is Michiru Yamane's first time working on a Castlevania game. Boy oh boy, this sure is a video game. Everyone's favorite, Symphony of the Night, marks the evolution of the franchise into something truly significant with the switch to a Metroidvania style inspired by Zelda, apparently. Just about everybody who's played this game loves it, and it serves as a really good introduction point to the series, having the basis of basically everything that'll become a staple from this point on, and also being a direct sequel to Rondo of Blood, which we've talked about how good that game is, and this one's even better.
But alas, now that we've warmed ourselves up with talking all this mojo about the previous Castlevania games, only really hitting their stride to make something special with Rondo, I think it's time we get into the real slam jammer, as we've said in the intro. Goddamn, how I adore this game. It's one of those games like Devil May Cry 1 that I always love going back to, just sitting down once and then getting off the couch with another playthrough under my belt, because it just makes me happy every time I play it. From the aesthetic to the ambiance to the cheesy yet campy PS1 voice acting, awesome, the sound design to the delightful elegance of the music. Everything about this game we just love. Nothing is more satisfying than just hitting smooth, consecutive, non-stopping backdashes into a one-hit swipe of the Alucard sword, or shield rod, or Chrysogram, or whatever you may fancy taking out the evil monsters from hell that bane our very existence. That just goes to show that there's a lot of player freedom within this game. Whatever weapon or shield you like, or whichever movement option you'd like, such as wing smash or just buttery backdashes, it gives the player a lot to just mold their experience in a very stylistic manner that I find very lovely and endearing. Especially so when you see that they were hating on this game and glazing Castlevania 64 back in the day. Boy oh boy, how things are different. Everything just comes together and gives me this warm fuzzy feeling whenever I play it, like DMC3 or Little Big Planet. It fills you with an unremovable and very much nuanced complexity to this feeling that makes you feel with this wonderment and joy that you can't find in a lot of other media. It really makes me wonder to myself a lot about how are video games just not having that spark that they were putting in these games like Symphony? Or is it simply that Symphony is far too flavorful and has too much brimming character that most games do not nowadays? Most likely the latter.
Point is, this is one of those games that you can just sit through and have a blast all throughout. I am sitting here with a mango juice box, genuinely using all the brain juices in my brain to think of a flaw, and I really can't. I just fucking can't. I would always raise an eyebrow when people say this game is near perfection, but not perfect because every game has its flaws. And I sit here wondering that this never is the case, because if they're talking about a game they simply love to pieces, love every organ of every single developer who has worked tirelessly for said game, yet they bug it down like that, it's just odd. But my main thing is to say, this is one of the few games that absolutely has no flaws whatsoever. It's perfect throughout. Pacing, gameplay, music, atmosphere, campiness, story, movement, everything. It's just elegant excellence. Yet, I know someone is still going to come up and say, well, actually, about the flaws thing, but all I can say is yippity-yappity, dog. Alright. Enough just general glazing of this game. Let's get into it for realsies. So this game does something that I usually love, and that's a strong sense of character progression. They show you how strong you currently are by playing through an ending of Rondo, and there is no way you can lose this fight against Dracula. Not only is it piss easy because of Richter's extra moves, if you somehow die, Maria just pulls up and gives you invincibility. That shit is not fair to good old Dracula. But even afterwards, you get this sense of character power when you get to play as Alucard, walking through the castle entrance, one-shotting these big-ass wolves and zombies and skeletons, until you basically meet your Unk, Death himself. And he takes all your stuff. Now this sets up things very well for the player, leaving you in anticipation of the type of power you can possibly gain for a first-timer's perspective. After that though, you get to truly just have this open playground for yourself to just dabble and dance and glide around with. The movement is something so fantabulous, it feels so just smooth to control that it is a delight to itself. It's like a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Out of all the Metroidvanias I've played, all of them, Hollow Knight, everything, even including some of the best Castlevanias such as Area, they still do not reach even half the amount of goodness that this movement just exuberates here.
The way you can just smoothly slide from here or there, the backdash just making you feel like you're in a complicated yet sophisticated bass groove. I really cannot put my finger as to why, no matter how many Metroidvanias I play, I can never just feel myself be fueled by utter joy and fulfillment with the movement given to me unless I am playing this game. It just has a spark, a twang. I really don't know. Or maybe someone far smarter than me could figure it out, but I doubt it, honestly. This game's movement is fluid and responsive, controlling the game's pace in a way. You control it yourself. Do you want to go fast? Do you want to take your time? Do you want to style with it? Do you want to check here with the bat? Or do you want to have a long high jump and swap to the wolf and swap back? Or that's a glitch, I don't know, I can't remember where I saw it from, but it's definitely just fun to try out all these different ways of just traversing this labyrinth that our sweet baby boy Alucard called home once upon a time. The controls are very sweet and intuitive, and it also has some Funkadelic magic spells that Alucard can use by doing fighting game inputs, and man, let me tell ya, as a fighting game player, this tickles my fancy so bad it just makes me want to scream, ah! In the best way possible. I truly wish more games in the series used this way of inputs. It uses stuff like quarter circles and even negative edge, and as I said around 2 years ago, told that to our good buddy Spin, who's editing this, by the way, bless him up. Quarter circle can save your life someday. True story.
Ham boning.
No.
Ham boning will save your life someday. It'll be all like, what? You trying to mug me?
Also, some of the spells are so goofy, I love them, like fucking Hellfire, which is, you know, fireballs. Symphony gives you this just perfect fusion of Alucard's half-human and half-vampiric nature, and it gives you these tools all on the surface for making a super-duper enjoyable and lovely experience for players who are into the Metroidvania genre or just simply interested within playing their first Castlevania game.
Throughout this extravagant endeavors through the castle, Alucard gets a bunch of different abilities he could use. Some we've dabbled on, such as the wolf, mist, and being a bat. But it doesn't stop there. As such, you can also build upon them by learning new moves or relics. And it really just adds another layer of depth within those forms, especially the bat form with the wing smash input. Chaining infinite wing smashes on the PS1 version is one of my favorite things to do. Not to mention the fact that you get stuff like absolutely peak abilities of any video game ever, the double jump. It feels so fucking good in these games. I can't quite explain why just a simple double jump feels so good, but it just does. You're gonna have to trust me on this, Captain. And not to mention it has a cool like wing animation which changes color based on your cloak color. Same as the bat, it just goes to show the amazing amount of detail they crammed into this game. They was in their bag making the scraw. Anyways, on top of what I just rambled about, there are also a variety of sub-weapons you can obtain. A lot are just the same from the classic Vanias, and my personal favorite to use in this one is the same as Rondo, the Bible. Now, the boss fights, though, they're really easy. This game is probably the easiest Castlevania ever in history, but that's besides the point. I like the variety in the food options in the game. You can really eat some big ass foods. I did not know Alucard was like that. Back to the bosses. What I really like about them is that they are just so gosh darn unique with their appearances and designs along with their attack patterns. It leads to a very fun game with a lot of memorable bosses, particularly the Castlevania 3 trio in the Reverse Castle. Another small detail about the boss is that with the next Metroidvania style game, and from that point on, every CV game that just showed you where a boss was using a boss door, which is great. But in this game, if you look closely, the game actually tries to show you which rooms have bosses using little details before every boss, such as a change in the color of sprite in the background, which is just an awesome detail that I truly enjoy and shows how much they really love making this game.
As I've touched on previously, the game's pacing just really, you control it by your will. And it's honestly one of the best parts of the game because there's always a constant feel of progression. With every nook and cranny, there's upgrades or things to collect or just to find and see. But one of the best parts about the game, in my humble opinion, is the castle itself. It is absolutely stunningly designed. The way it looks and sounds, the layout of it all. Some of the greatest Metroidvania memories, I suppose, for me personally, is hunkering down with a cold drink on standby and exploring through the castle, finding out all of what I can and do what I can. Every area is just delicious to the eyes and has a very cohesive and structured timbre to it. It's in its classical fashion. There's a bunch of very clear areas you can see yet you can't access, such as maybe you're missing an ability or you just can't jump high enough yet, which just adds to the elusive mystery that just makes my monkey brain go ooga booga. Once I do have said ability and can go check it out, for what I missed, it gives you a great sense of triumph and reward, no matter how small said reward might be. But it's great nonetheless to see the map get filled out more. But there are also super duper unique ways to open up these set areas, like I forget the area's name, but it's where you have to fight those fuck ass toads and then you have to lure the skeleton with the barrel. Broski think he's Donkey Kong, but yeah, you have to lure him enough to throw it on the wooden floor in this very much concrete cave, and then it would burn and break down, leading you down to progressing. Man, it feels just so good. It's like little brain teasers like that. I'm telling y'all, this castle is perfect. The visual design of it all too. The grand clock room just dooming in the sheer aura that, yeah, this place is super duper extra important. The long library where you can kick it with a librarian and he could tell you some cool things or buy up stuff, or the sweet outdoor areas where you can just see these grayish clouds in the dark moon just looming over your head, consuming the skies. It's some real great stuff. Not to mention the little rooms that just add so much charm and character to the castle, like the confessional. Yeah. What Big Bro gonna do to you? You're just gonna have to go and find out. Take a stab at it, if you will. One thing I'd mention before we move on, that besides those things that we talked about, the design of the castle, you have the reverse castle. After you knock Richter out for being possessed by Shaft, and yeah, I'm not gonna ogle on about it, it's fine to be in the reverse castle, just get a groove on. It's pretty simple to explore in my humble opinion, and you get the Christogram, which is good enough of a reward, I suppose. But now on to the main part of this, the music. Oh boy, what a doozy. Obviously such a beautiful, rich and vibrant, yet sophisticated soundtrack. It is absolutely dazzling to the ears and always leaves me in awe hearing the types of chords and how they chain them together for this game. The lovely Michiru Yumane composed this devilishly good soundtrack, in which, if I recall correctly, she was around 19 or just in college, something of the sort, but still, if she was around that age, yeesh, I am about that age personally, and yeah, I write my own music, but this is on another level, man. A lot of Symphony's music is very much classically influenced rather than some of the older NES titles, which are more power chord infused with atmospheric blemishes of classical stuff. Generally, in some tracks, she restricts herself with classical inversions and progressions, which obviously would lead to very much experimental and groovy tracks. Though I'm not as knowledgeable with classical forms of music as I've stated before, and I'm not quite sure, but a lot of the tracks here seem to be using dominant chords chained together, as well as the bass line is usually played very much chromatically. One of my favorite pieces from the soundtrack is Crystal Teardrops, and I've actually really put this song in a pedestal to me. It has influenced me in certain ways. That's absolutely glorious composition. It uses some arpeggiated chords and has a shimmery, glassy type of tone to it all, that in my mind, while composing this, I believe Miss Yamane kept in mind to add some flavor to the word teardrops in the title of the track. The harmony is elegant and keeps the listener engaged, and it's very reminiscent to Megadeth's Lucretia, which can teach you a lot about harmony, and that is the part of which I hold it in such a high regard. Along with Lucretia, it just taught me a lot about how harmony can come into play and evolve a sound, whether it's two different instruments working to become fluid and smooth within one another, or two of the same instrument harmonizing and taking out the sound and making you engage with the music itself. The melodic intricacies of this track is simple yet infectious to the ears. It adds an ethereal quality to the whole composition. Overall, I believe that Crystal Teardrops is just simply a masterful song in general and a piece of art within itself, and I very much hold it dearly within every fiber of my being, man. Another track that I believe to be so beautiful would be Lost Paintings. This one is pretty easy to figure out in my humble opinion. It adds some conventional music archetypes to bloom it into something amazing to me, such as being in a minor key, which gives it that melancholy vibe to the whole ordeal, and has some dabbling within chromaticism that layers it with complexity, and it sets out to push the buttons of certain atmospheric timbres. The combination of harmonic simplicity, melodic beauty, rhythmic steadiness, and it gives out this nostalgic yet elusive mysterious aura to the track itself, and it really fits where it plays, that being the reverse chapel, having this beautiful and sort of chaotic background of the sky moving combined with the enemies, really emphasizing this song's mysterious aura and complementing the game's Metroidvania style. Or the tracks can just be groovy.
The story is also the start of Castlevania actually having a proper plot, is it featuring the mystery of why Richter disappeared and turned evil, and also establishing why Alucard helps humanity instead of his father. And you really can sympathize and get in Alucard's head while playing the game, thinking about how he feels about the whole ordeal with his cursed bloodline. Also, the voice acting is really silly, and it's great. Although I do enjoy the PSP voices as well. While the plot is overall pretty simple, I think it serves as an interesting thing to think about while playing, and even after playing, knowing how things went with Richter retiring the vampire killer to the Morris family, and Alucard living among humans instead of going to sleep again. It's the sort of thing where you can theorize and make your own sort of unique ideas for how the characters feel through the things the game has to offer you, such as the succubus fight, the confessional, or of course the supreme banger of a song, The Tragic Prince, being pretty much Alucard's theme in this beautiful, kick-ass rock theme that also has some tragic undertones.
All in all, Symphony of the Night is one of our favorite games of all time. It's beautiful, art in its purest form, a timeless classic that I'm gonna let my kids play, and then their kids play, so on and so forth. It makes it so worth it to see all the sights, goof off in this hypnotizing architecture, and it's rewarding for simply controlling Alucard through it all. The ability progressing and all these beautiful, gratifying details around the castle of the sea. It is simply worthy of placing the Vania part within Metroidvania. Yes, indeed, fuck off with that search action shit or whatever. It pioneers the genre and pushes it onward to becoming what is probably the most popular indie game genre. It is one of a kind. Scratch that, it is a kind. It's just a thing that stands on its own 2 feet. I implore you, get this game on like the PS4 or 5 or the 360 joint, or I guess that's dead now, or the Castlevania X Chronicles thingy on PSP, or if you're stinking filthy rich, just grab an original copy, or best of all, pull some of that yo-ho-hoing if you catch my drift. Anyways, I love this game. I am flattered I got to even simply utter a word about it and explain my deep love for it. Thank y'all.
Now, there was a gap in between this game and Symphony where a couple games released, but I'm not too interested in covering those, nor am I really a big fan of this game, but I do think it has some really interesting ideas, mainly its story. To start though, I'd like to chat about the game's visual fidelity. It's akin to Sonic CD, I'd say. Popping colors, Funkadelic trippy backgrounds that look straight out of a 70s comedy, to be honest. And I frankly really like this look that they gave it. Alas, with all that being said, I do not think this castle is super memorable, nor is its second version, where I believe they tried to take some roots from Symphony's idea. But it did improve a lot on Circle of the Moon's sprite work, which had these tiny little gummy bear looking skeletons. Here, it's much more highly detailed, and I think all things considered it is a very wonderful and pretty game to look at. Now, I know some folks think it's too bright and such, but the sweet color vomit works for me personally, and I like it. On top of that, I do really enjoy the dashes within this game, and the animation doesn't look stiff at all, and it feels really good. It's like butter drizzled popcorn, just slick and tasty to handle. And it's your main form of movement, very much lacking compared to Symphony, but honestly, nothing really compares to Symphony. I also really like the spell combo thingy that this game has. It's very fun to use and just absolutely fucking creams the bosses. But I still think it's handled well enough. They give you just the right amount to toy with and see what fits you as a player and what you like. So I feel that sometimes they might be a little too overpowered for my liking. But hey, it's a Metroidvania. Unless you order Ecclesia, little to no difficulty at all. They also do remind me of the orb system from Lament of Innocence. Now, getting to the story, you play as just Belmont, and as you enter the castle after your friend Maxim informs you that another friend of yours, Lighty, has been kidnapped, but things are not as they seem, as you quickly find out that there were actually two castles and that they were summoned by Maxim, who attempted to use Dracula's body parts, which are a really cool idea, by the way, and a callback to Simon's Quest, which would be the game right before this, to rid Just of his fate by wishing himself to be able to use the vampire killer in Just's stead. It's genuinely a neat plot that's another early point of how harmful the Belmont family legacy is as a cycle, and that Maxim just wanted his friend to not suffer that fate. And the moment he honestly tells Just this, the next area, which is the chapel, plays a weird and corrupted version of Richter's theme, being Divine Bloodlines, which Richter being the next in line after Just, and also being the one to truly realize the harm of the Belmont legacy. It just shows how cool Castlevania's subtextual narrative can be. Unfortunately though, it's a little hard to realize this due to the game's awful music quality, but the arranged version on the soundtrack is really neat. Overall, it's a really cool plot, and if you want more detail on it and other Castlevania stories, I recommend checking out Weigel Village's video on the narrative. Also, shout out to the furniture room. Another game that's extremely popular among fans is this little piece of magic for the GBA. And frankly, I'm not even sure what to say that hasn't been said before, but I'll give it my best shot. You play as Soma Cruz, a Japanese student, not a transfer student, that's just some silly localization, who wants to meet up with his friend Mina to watch the 2035 eclipse. Which, yes, this game takes place in the future, but honestly, that's not too prevalent beyond the funny ideas or headcanons you could make about Soma as a character, since we now sort of know what sort of childhood he might have had. Because obviously, 2035 is a lot closer now than 2003. But regardless, after an arduous climb up what feels like never-ending stairs, Soma faints and come to in Mina's lap, along with a strange man being there called Genya Arikado, in what appears to be Dracula's castle, and thus the game begins. This game's major innovation is its tactical soul system, which is an insane idea that I have no clue how the devs were able to implement so well, considering how fast they were making these games. It basically turns the whole game into a massive collectible, with almost each and every single monster, enemy, demon, whatever, having a unique soul to offer you. And the game really does make use of this idea, with a lot of very cool souls to be had, such as the Persephone soul, which is literally just a vacuum cleaner, to genuinely awesome souls like Killer Mantle, which swaps enemies' HP and MP. There's so much added to the gameplay here through the system, and the game uses it to its fullest, truly. But what about the castle itself? What's it like? Well, as I said before, the future setting doesn't really change much, but that doesn't mean this is your average castle. No, not at all. There's a ton of unique areas, and in fact, this game has one of my favorite areas in a Metroidvania ever, which is the Inner Quarters. It's this really unique setting filled with a ton of cool enemies, such as the previously mentioned Persephone, who's a maid that bows to you before she starts just throwing hands, or the Kyoma demon, who hides in the mirror to snake an attack on you. And of course the absolutely amazing Headhunter boss, who just has a room full of decapitated heads as a collection of sorts, showcasing how long it's been around, and it's a really intriguing set piece, along with the actual fight that involves it actively switching heads mid-fight, with each one having unique designs and moves. It's basically 3 fights in one. And upon defeat, their soul is a passive one that increases your stats depending on how many souls you've collected, sort of carrying on what the Headhunter started by collecting heads. After all, what's better than just the head, the very fabric of the being, the soul? Not to mention the music that plays here, which, while yes, the soundtrack is a bit nerfed due to the GBA's capabilities, it still gets the job done, and the Inner Quarters track is this really unique kind of melancholic yet also foreboding piece that really stands out overall. And not just one area in the whole game. They were truly making one hell of a game this time. As I was saying previously, while the music is sort of compressed, it's still a banger soundtrack with a ton of unique compositions, yet again from Michiru Yamane, which cover a wide variety of vibes that perfectly fit each area, with a lot of these being favorites of mine, such as the Top Floor or Clock Tower, or how could I forget the absolute banger that is Julius's scene, Heart of Fire. But humbly, even the greatest composer on the planet couldn't save every track from the GBA's compression, with some sounding genuinely hilarious in how bad they are. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the plot this time around, which is a really neat and interesting epilogue, with Soma Cruz being the reincarnation of the Dark Lord, and being very similar to Messias in design, as Lament and this game were made in the same year. He's also just a fucking trip master, golly! The jeans, the fur coat, Soma Cruz is ahead of his time. The fashion sense is insane. But back to him being Dracula's reincarnation. It turns out Dracula was defeated for reals during 1990, which Nostradamus predicted a powerful king of terror would rise, that being Dracula, of course. But I guess he never got a chance to showcase that, considering he got, to say the least, cooked by the last and most powerful Belmont, Julius, during an eclipse in which a Hakuba clan member, which Mina is from, sealed the castle, aka the source of Dracula's power, into the eclipse itself. This all sounds really cool, right? Too bad there is no 1999 game and we'll never get one, despite the fact that they keep bringing it up. Regardless, once Soma realizes this, he has to go to the source of the castle's power and fight Chaos, which also looks like an eclipse, finally ending Dracula's reign of terror over humanity through the power of friendship and a big-ass sword. With a remix of Bloody Tears playing, Soma awakes in Mina's lap yet again, and the timeline ends with a beautiful and meaningful interpretation of the cycle of the past, even featuring a fight between the Belmonts and Dracula. The only issue really is that Alucard, or Genya Arikado, seems to just not help at all beyond the intro. I get he wants Soma to realize he's Dracula, but maybe stop Yoko from getting stabbed? Overall, Area stands strong as a successor to Symphony, only really being limited by the GBA as a system rather than the developer's own creativeness, and is a wondrous experience that's also really nice to see and know how this 1,000-year-long feud ended in a very fun package.
Hiya. I'm the dude that usually edits these videos, but since this is a pretty big project and we want this to be an amalgamation of all our Castlevania experiences, I'm gonna be handling this game. So, Lament of Innocence, the first 3D Castlevania game. No, not you. Get away. Not only is that shit a horrible ass video game, but it's not even canon. And on that note, this game is the first game in the series, chronologically taking place in 1094, starring Leon Belmont on a quest to save his kidnapped fiancée. On his way there, he meets Ronaldo Gandolfi, who's pretty much the only human interaction you get for most of this game. Developers knew this and gave him his chill-ass shop theme. It's nice and warm in comparison to the chaos within the castle walls. Going into the castle, the atmosphere is really eerie, plastered with cool hues and this haunting track playing over it. To the left, you've got a little tutorial area, which I really appreciate. It teaches you the gameplay and mechanics, and even hands you a free relic to start your journey. If you head to the right, you'll find your pretty basic level select with 5 levels. And while the game nudges you towards going to the House of Sacred Remains as the first level, you can really go at them in whichever order you want. It's pretty cool. I do want to mention as a side note here though, Where the fuck do these things take Leon exactly? Some I could see being somewhere in the castle, like the House of Sacred Remains or the Ghostly Theater. But aside from that, all of these seem to take place in completely different places. My dude Walter really sent Leon to Brazil. The House of Sacred Remains is a pretty bare bones level. It has the general Gothic castle aesthetic, but aside from that, I don't really find it very interesting, except for the fact that the boss is a giant dick worm for some reason. Walter must be a real freak. The next level I usually go to is the Garden Forgotten by Time. It's a great level that gets you into the main gameplay loop of the game. That being exploring a medium-ish sized level, looking for all manner of knickknacks like the relics, which are the items that give you a passive ability like gaining money anytime you're hit, or the busted Black Bishop that increases your damage for a little while. There are also these elemental guys you can run into that upgrade your weapon to certain elements, which I feel is a great reward for really going out there and exploring the area. Or consulting that strategy guide like a chode. These are also nice because some of the classic games had whip upgrades you could get, and I think this is a nice way to keep them in without making you lose them anytime you get hit. Another thing, this game doesn't do the level system from the Metroidvanias. Instead, as you play the game, Leon gets new combos he can use in battle. One of my favorites being the pull you do on weaker enemies. They really do take advantage of your weapon being a whip. It's really well done, especially combined with the sound design. It's especially satisfying. Leon also has a few quick dodges he can pull off, but I gotta ask, where the fuck did he learn to do that sick-ass backflip in 1094? I know he attended gymnastics class in the military. There's also no real camera control, which I think is just a bit annoying at points, but it's not too much of a bother. That might not apply to people that aren't Ocarina of Time pilled chads like me though. Geez, I really love this game's loading screens. The ghastly image of Leon running through a black screen is like a microcosm of what this entire console generation looks like to me. It's great. Back to the levels though. They also have you do a small puzzle that's usually just grab X item, take to the boss room, so you can actually fight the guys. These bosses are really fun. They use audio cues to signal their attacks, and I think that's a very fun way to keep you on your toes with each encounter. All these bosses are really great. You've got Medusa, Virgil DMC3, and a prating knave. The bosses also drop these orbs, which give you a lot of customizability by changing the effects of your sub-weapon, but I tend to stick with Michael's sword personally. After beating the 5 levels, Sarah is given back to Leon, but over here, turn her into a vampire. So Ronaldo begins a ritual where Leon must kill Sarah so her soul can go into it and give it the power to kill vampires, thus creating the vampire killer. Now yeah, that does sound a little but it's still a pretty cool cutscene that shows us the in-lore origin of the vampire killer, and why it does what it does. Also, this cutscene is where you get the obligatory PS2 scream. Yeah, this game's fucking hilarious. Going back to the castle, vampire killer in hand, you get the last level of the game. Before we get to the climax, I want to talk about this game's secret boss for just a sec. Is the atmosphere here? Yeesh, gives me the heebie-jeebies. The blood on the floor, the long Mario 64-ass staircase, sound of its heart pumping as you get closer and closer. When you finally get to it, it's this rotting thing with flesh and maggots dripping right off it. It's very creepy, and its description even adds to it. He is a monster created by mortal hands and sealed in the prison of eternal torture due to his uncontrollable power, and to the fact he nearly ended the world. Look at that shit. Plus it has 6 health bars? Nah, Leon truly different. If I were him, I would be like, nearly ended the world, not nearly ended me though. Back to the final level. The Pagoda of the Misty Moon, huh? Pagoda. Igarashi, I know your ass made that shit up. There's no way that's a real word. Regardless, the music here is great. The Lament of Innocence is such a good track. It captures Leon's feelings at that moment very well. It just fits the final level theme. Plus the title drop is just fucking awesome. Just listening to it brings me back to 2020 so much that I can smell the corona-filled air. bursting into the top chamber of the castle. We beat Walter with the power of the vampire killer and the Black Bishop. And suddenly, Matthias pops out of nowhere and reveals he's orchestrated this whole plot so he could curse God by being immortal. Now, notice how I didn't tell you who this guy at the start, because if you skip the opening text scroll, you really wouldn't have a clue who this guy is, which I think is really fucking funny. So Leon and Matthias were longtime homies, and Matthias hates God because of his wife's tragic passing, leading him to reach immortality for the sake of his humanity, thus becoming Dracula, we all know and love. He fucks off and leaves Leon to deal with death, in which he drops his tough-ass bar.
You have become a cursed being, and I will never forgive you. This whip and my kinsmen will destroy you someday. From this day on, the Belmont clan will hunt the night!
Kinda embarrassing how it took them 1,000 years, 6 Belmonts, Hector, Alucard, Shinoa, and 3 Morrises to do that, but you know, it's all good in the end. At the end of the day, this is a really charming, funny, unique, and most importantly fun game that I definitely think you should at the very least check out if it seems interesting. Ball out.
Now, you know how I said Area was the end of the timeline? Yeah, I sorta lied. There is actually one more game and the novel after Area, but humbly, in my eyes, unlike Area's really fun story, Dawn presents some interesting ideas, but overall feels a little unnecessary, to me at least. But what about the game itself? Is it also an unneeded addition, or does it improve upon Area and become a worthy sequel? Yeah, enough mystery. It's another banger from the devs in terms of gameplay. First off, we finally left the GBA mines and are now on the Nintendo dual screen, which hardware-wise is much, much stronger. So the sprite work for this game is absolutely gorgeous, with so many cool and unique details throughout the whole base/castle. And Soma feels a little smoother to control overall. It's truly such a marvel to look at and just shows how much passion and skill the devs have for 2D sprite art. I cannot overstate how cool it is. But that's just the looks. Thankfully, the gameplay is also quite good, serving as an overall improvement to Area, with the soul system being reworked to reward you for having more than one of a soul, and the addition of a crafting system to incentivize trying to get more souls, so you can craft better weapons. And it just leads to a really fun and tight experience where you just get souls to upgrade your weapon of choice, of which all types are viable and fun to use. The souls themselves have also just been improved in general, with the upgrades to them being really fun and unique, as well as there just being some of the best gameplay mechanics I've ever seen. Like, Yurik is such a cool fucking soul, how do you even come up with that? The castle itself is also really fun to explore, with the opening area of the Lost Village being one of my favorite areas throughout the franchise, as well as most areas being really tightly designed with a great sense of progression. Although some of them do come off a bit like inferior versions of areas, mainly the garden. But overall, it's still one of the best castles and serves as a fun place to explore, and is very rewarding if you decide to do so. There's a ton of unique set pieces and even a whole secret area featuring new enemies. And the way to access it is using the Bone Arc Soul, which is literally just Soma summoning 2 skeletons to carry him around. It's funny. This game really is the game that keeps on giving though, because after getting the true ending, you are rewarded with Julius mode, which unlike Areas has an actual plot and is a what-if scenario where Soma became the Dark Lord. Yoko, Julius, and Alucard must team up to defeat him in a brand new boss fight where Soma uses his souls against the tree. Not Hammer though, he got cut and it saddens me to this day. Finally, while I said I don't like the story much, I do want to point out 2 moments. The first is when Julius breaks the barrier into the abyss and this goofy old man just screams, "Yeah!" while doing the Grand Cross. It's such a memorable moment and sort of implies Julius isn't really as serious as he acts when he's fighting demons. And lastly, the ending dialogue between Soma and Arikado really serves as a nice last piece to 100% solidify that Dracula is truly gone. it's a pretty hopeful place to end things off. This game truly is amazing and I love every second of it, and while not being as good as Area, is a worthy successor, especially in gameplay, and I cannot express how much I love it and think it stands tall as one of the greats in the Metroidvania genre.
Golly, the blueberry juice was delicious. Oh wait, it's my turn again? Say less, bruh. Everyone got a lineage. Whether it's good or bad, it's flowing through our blood. And for this journey we follow Jonathan Morris, the son of John Morris, the protagonist of the Sega Genesis game, alongside Charlotte, his best friend, being requested by the church to fulfill the never-ending Belmont tradition. Unlike the previous DS game, Portrait's game follows two different playstyles. Jonathan, the usual one, but can't use the vampire killer to its fullest due to plot reasons, and Charlotte, who's the spellcaster type. One thing that I find neat is that this tag team play actually affects the gameplay in its own unique way, especially with the final boss. That one pretty much rolls up the whole teaming of it. Within this Mario 64-ass journey, you'll meet the mastermind behind those twisted paintings, Browner and his daughters. During it, you get to also do some side quests. Yes, side quests. From a ghost named Wind. And honestly, I'ma be real, I didn't do them, bruh. Listen, I'm horrid at doing fighting game inputs. Like, what makes you think I'm gonna learn potentially more of those, bruh? Skill issue aside, Wind's an intriguing character. I won't go much into details now, but his role throughout the story is one that I think improved the game it's meant to tie in rather pretty greatly lore-wise. Overall, this game is pretty much your usual Metroidvania with its little fun flair. Bosses are alright, music's funky, like always, and they got Sega star poses in it. Look at them, bro! Yeesh! Now on to the nitty-gritty of why I love this game so much. The story! Spoiler warning, I'm about to go unfiltered with this part. So, for those who want to go in blind, I'll recommend going to the Ecclesia part. Down the hall and to the left. I'm sure there's a portal there. Alright, the thing that I really appreciate is Jonathan's art. At first he started feeling resentful over his deceased father, leaving him such a legacy that he believed ruined his family's name, while also questioning his worth. But eventually, he learns the truth from none other than Wind himself. Or should I say, Eric Lacard. Yup, this is where the bloodline tie-in comes in on. So remember Browner's daughters? Yeah, that guy ain't the father, bruh. The truth is, they got Lacard DNA. Through the true ending, Charlotte learned something that wasn't achievable before. The cure for vampirism. And as you get to freedom, you get to experience what I believe to be one of the peakest moments within the franchise. You get to fight the Whiplash Belmont memory itself. And by this point, you're alone in this battle. It ain't an easy one, but damn, it's so hype. Overcoming your own generational struggle and ending it by battling Richter? Come on, bruh. Can't tell me that ain't sick. Eventually you gain the strength needed to fuel the whip. And with it, you get to defeat Browner, Skeletor, and Dracula himself with the power of a Belmont, concluding your venture like everyone else afterwards. The importance of bonds and family is one that reoccurs throughout Castlevania. But for me, I think Portrait and Area 2 handle it best with the characters. Hell, even the villains plays a role with that. I've said it 1,000 times before, but I'll always cherish that trope because in life, you'll meet people, grow with them, learn from them, alongside sharing interests with them. Sure, along the route there'll be some troubles here and there, but that, my friend, is the beauty of living. Not everything's perfect, and that's okay. Gotta make it worth it, you know? Well, with all that being said, I'll be going off. Take care, fellas.
Well, it's time for Order of Ecclesia. Playing this game is like tasting a cooling drink in the summery breeze of a clean summer night. The most interesting aspect about Ecclesia is that it contains a very playful structure that has a very much addictive feel. Just like earlier Classicvania titles, it's like a fusion, if you will. To my knowledge and feel from playing through these games and replaying some of the Metroidvanias, it's very much a look backwards. Rather than innovating or trying something out new, it looks back on old ideas and concepts and brushes it up and coats it with paint anew. And it makes it a more swanky and refreshing type of game after sitting through so many of the Metroidvanias, trying to recapture the very perfect and excellent grace of Symphony. For example, Weagle Village is filled with descendants of the Belmonts, and it's a cute little wink and nod to Simon's quest about Simon building a town at the end. That's why when it sets out on this lush and very distinguished 50-50 of some very fun and Mega Man-esque linear platforming stages or straight line point A to B, that is very fulfilling as it's filled to the brim with funky enemy designs and animations that beat ass, really, looking utterly embellishing, as well as even when they simply have like the designs of the straight lines, as I mentioned, I feel at least that there is a lot, and I mean a lot more breakable walls and areas to find just by moving and exploring every little area in this game. And doing that is such a wonder that I haven't felt since Symphony. And yes, Aria does come close, but my golly, in Ecclesia, it is executed with such finesse that I can't even begin to comprehend. Obviously, besides the hot dog water sales that this game got, why they wouldn't push more for this, because it's just honestly so fucking good. One thing before we continue to the meat and potatoes of the game, I do want to just dance over the art style change. I think it's not Ayamo Kojima, but I think if not her, this is an absolutely perfect evolution for that rich Gothic style. Way better than that how-to draw ass anime style Dawn of Sorrow had, especially with the opening and ending. It's easy on the eyes and looks pretty to me, pal. Let's start off with the easiest thing to get into, glyphs. Here you have, my good folks, is probably the pinnacle of Castlevania combat in my humble opinion. It allows you to effortlessly just attack with a sword or hammer. Or hey, you want some rapid fire action? Hit up 2 hammers against the mini skeleton enemies and watch them fucking implode within themselves. It's so smooth and fluid to just see them crumble against hitting them with the jackpot being their weakness. It's a very intriguing system when I look at it, especially when you mix and match and get to experiment with what works with what during X, Y, or Z situation. But that doesn't make you stupendously broken right from the get-go. No. Not only do you have to firstly collect, or I suppose absorb the glyphs, but this game, for once in a Metroidvania, has challenge to it. It's not an artificial type of difficulty. No. This is just pattern recognition and understanding the feel and controls of what's given to you. The progression in this game is either slightly less better feeling in Symphony, or honestly, it might even be fucking better. It's just that more satisfactory than Symphony in this regard, at least. Finding different glyphs across the screens and maps in different areas, not to mention the villagers, which I will tap into in a bit, but it all feels very inspired and, just little tiny winks and nods to other design elements from previous games, including the Classicvanias. Though to be frank with y'all, some of the reused areas and like the very small one big line type of places that I mentioned, they aren't the best to me compared to stuff like an Aria, which is very unique with each individual screen brimming with colors and sweet little details. Like a personal favorite detail of mine comes from Symphony, and it's a screen before you have to head up and fight the doppelganger Alucard at the beginning of the game. You can see skeletons hanging by a noose, and next to the body is cloves of garlic. Ugh, fuck man, Symphony's so fucking cool. But back to my main topic. Point is, they don't give you room, or a better phrase would be to spice it up enough. Those screens are very few and far between. But that part generally doesn't apply once you get to the Castlevania itself. Now, as a castle and an exploratory space, that by itself is just a wonderfully designed marvel. I also Really like how this one actually has a cool story instead of just like interesting concepts within a paper thin narrative from what the series has offered besides external media. A lot of these characters that are written by the main story writers aren't really handled with as much depth as some people might put them on the pedestal of being, which I was surprised that they give these characters a nice amount of attention and care. Especially Chanel, I'd say she's simply great. She's designed well, she's elegant and beautiful, very fitting. And the drama between her just becoming an emotional dominant spiel, not to mention her dynamic with Albus, it's very good stuff. Now, from the villagers and their quests, you have to save all the villagers to get the true ending, and some of their quests are pretty good, I guess. The blacksmith is the most, how can I put this? Going through the motions one. Like, you generally just play through the game and you'll collect each ore he wants and such. Monica is another funky one. I like getting her threads and such, as it pushed me to explore and actually rewarded me with the powerful sword glyph because it was in a similar area. And also her self-deprecating talk once you save her. I remember she said something like, "Oh, I don't even have silk to make this for you. You shouldn't have even bothered saving me." That hit me because I've talked to a lot of folks who struggle with self-worth through my years, and it just hit me personally. But on top of that, I just think it adds to Ecclesia's very rich and flavorful Gothic aesthetic. Yeah, it's a staple of the series. It's fucking Castlevania. Of course it's gonna be Gothic, but bear with me, fellas. It feels kind of different. Can't really put my finger on it, but it's very distinct compared to like literally every other fucking Castlevania game. It stands alone as one of the more unique games tonally, and it's very engaging after going through all of these games. Once again, proving itself as the breath of fresh air in the series. Needed to keep itself fresh and fantabulous just to not get hit with the fatigue such. For an example, the RE series, that had to, it was, people were saying it was getting stale by the time RE4 rolled around. And the music, mighty fine. I don't think I'm qualified to analyze the music itself, such as what I did with Rondo and Symphony, as I simply have not listened to it enough times to do it even half the amount of justice I'd like to do if I were to attempt something like that again. But as in Castlevania tradition, the music is amazing. All the songs are so carefully curated, so sweetly. Stuff like Sorrow's Distortions has this very thick, warm, blankety type of tone to the guitar that starts with an ascending power chord progression that then leads to a bunch of pop muted notes within a scale. And from what I can tell, listening to it, it gives me that high octane feeling akin to the Castlevania songs, and it kind of sounds like some early Metallica stuff. For example, Jump in the Fire. At the end of the day, Order of Ecclesia is such a switch up and funky fresh game, man. It has that spice of being more difficult than any other Metroidvania I've played, but in a very fair and nice challenged way. The music is beautiful start to finish. Enemy designs and areas are imaginative and groovy for the series. Each area is offering you opportunities to play and toy with the glyph system that is just so juicy. It holds a very distinct spot within this very colorful and varying series, and it's one of a kind, truly. One of the best. I'm sure in some hopeful type of twisted delusion, I got that honestly with how the Castlevania collections are going, we'd probably get a new Castlevania game in the next 5 to 7 years, I'd say. But if not, hey, Bloodstain's right there, pal. But my point is, for a wonderful series such as this to basically just die off after this, they left a damn fine, no, scratch that, they left an impeccably designed game that is a testament to how highly regarded the genre is, and yet it's tragically slept on. If not, y'all gotta hop on now.
Is he gonna do it? Yes. Can you take me higher to a place?
Thank you all for watching the video, and I really hope you enjoyed it. This all sort of started from me being in a Castlevania kick, as even though I have been a huge fan, I haven't really talked about it much since a few years ago after finishing basically every game. But recently I've been into replaying it and discussing the lore a lot more, particularly in, the Vampire Hunter Union server. But overall, I wanted this video to be just a pure love letter to what this franchise is, to me, and to everybody else who was working on this video. And that's probably the biggest reason we avoided covering games like Simon's Quest or Castlevania 64, because I know those games do have their fans. I personally can't, agree with those, but those games do have their fans, and I'd rather not just put in a small paragraph saying, oh, this game sucks, absolute dick, when I can just talk about the games I do like and how much they mean to me. And, with the Castlevania fandom being as small as it is, it really can't be good to spread so much negativity. So, thank you for watching, and I really, really hope this is exactly what I wanted it to be, which is just a love letter and showcases how much the franchise means to us.